All right, everybody, welcome back to another Shots from the Winchester Podcast presented by GREENCASTLE. Today I have Whitney Millin with me. Welcome.
Thanks.
So Whitney is a veteran and she is an employee of GREENCASTLE. So we're going to learn all about that, and we're going to talk about how you can use the skills you learn in the military in your civilian career. So stay tuned for that. So we're into Winchester. We usually do a shot, but because we have a really long day today, we're just going to drink some good old-fashioned water. So let's do a cheers with the water.
Cheers.
Cheers. All right. So why don't we learn a little bit more about your military background? So you want to hit some highlights of what you've been doing?
Yeah. So I've served in the Army for 15 years now. I've had a little bit of an interesting career in that I've gone back and forth between active and the National Guard. I am an intel officer, and I've served primarily in special operations, looking at kind of the human domain of the military, and I continue to serve in that role today. So.
And you are living out in?
Idaho, near Jackson Hole, Wyoming there. But I serve in the Colorado National Guard. So I'm a little bit all over the West.
And then you're working in Malvern, Pennsylvania.
And I'm working in Malvern.
Right. So you are just very, I was going to say worldly, but it's not. Whatever that would be for, going across the country.
Yeah.
But cool. So how did you find GREENCASTLE and what do you do here?
Yeah. So our veteran network is pretty strong, and I knew somebody who was already working here, and he was very good about reaching out several years ago, actually, and the timing kind of came up where I was looking for something new, and so that's how I ended up at GREENCASTLE.
Okay, and so what do you do here?
I'm a business intelligence analyst. We work on projects to help companies and clients really automate their data and visualize their data is probably our biggest thing, making sure that you can see what your KPIs are, or making sure that you're measuring your metrics appropriately and everyone can see them.
So. Nice. Okay. Yeah. So you're like one of the real smart people at GREENCASTLE. That's when I think about the BI team, the business intelligence team, I'm like, they're the really, really smart ones. They're doing stuff that I just way above my head. So kudos to you. It's pretty cool. So you're very passionate about taking those military skills that you learn and transferring them into civilian skills, right? Mm-hmm. So why do you have that passion? Why do you think that's important?
Yeah. Well, I think we identify often, the value that veterans do bring to the corporate America. And a few years ago, I was in an MBA program, and being a little later in life to my graduate program, I was in class with a mix. We had some, older students, and by older I mean, like maybe 10 years into the workforce compared to, undergrad to graduate kind of demographic there. And really what I found, that was really the moment that cemented how much value veterans can bring to corporate America. Because a lot of our topics, when we're talking strategy, when we're talking complexity, and we're talking about like how do you manage people and manage them well in those types of environments, all of that really came together in that MBA where it felt natural. And I think it feels natural because as a very young officer or even a young enlisted person, you are dealing with a lot of responsibility very early on in your career. I was thinking a lot about, as a young lieutenant, what you can be responsible for. And if you get deployed and you're like, no other 22-year-olds are responsible for 30 other people and responsible for them in such a complicated and complex environment. And I think without even realizing it, you really internalize that, and it makes you so much better at strategy so much earlier on. So, typically someone in the corporate world probably wouldn't hit that level of experience until like director level, and we bring that in pretty early. So that it's a really awesome like parallel to see where that value can be translated.
Yeah. And even like leadership skills, right? So like that's stuff that I feel like civilians don't get as much experience in, and then are just kind of like put into a position. And granted, I guess that does happen in the military. You are put into a position, but you get a lot of training before that, right? So like, I assume the same feeling for like the leadership skills part too.
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, part of our leadership is so intimate. You know, again, kind of corporate America, sometimes you can keep a barrier there, but when you're deployed with people, you get to know them and everything about them. And so sometimes that can benefit your leadership, sometimes it can complicate your leadership, but you have this whole toolbox of how to deal with people, how to manage people, and how to be a servant leader, really.
Yeah. So thinking back through your military career so far, can you identify like a moment or a couple moments where you were like, you know, this is the skill that I'm going to use in the civilian world, or like this is the thing that I'm going to take with me? Yeah,
I think that became most obvious to me when I started my own company a few years ago. As goes any startup, you're completely lost. You have no idea what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It's confusing, it can be daunting, all the things, right? Just stressful. And it really showed my military skills come through in that moment, because you're able to break it down into processes and documents and a plan, right? And so that was one thing that really helped, and that goes into, you know, our military decision-making process, where we're drilled on this, and able to kind of take that same framework and be like, okay, how do I do this for my business on this day? And then kind of back to that strategy piece, you're trying to look, and as military officers, we're always like, okay, well, what's the 20-year plan? Like, everything you do has so many other implications. And so taking that and applying that to the business and going like, okay, here's what I have to do today. But if I want to strategically position myself, these are the partnerships that I need. This is how I need to involve all that. And I wouldn't have known that without those military skills. And it was just so perfect to be able to take that and translate it and be successful at it. I was able to do some pretty big strategic partnerships really early on, which, kind of led to the business's success, and it was great. But I completely attribute that to military skills.
That's great. So what business do you own? I'm very curious.
It's a soil health business. The short of it, it's a line of products that they feed the microbes in the soil, which ultimately helps with nutrient release, helps plants be more resilient and kind of come to their full genetic profile. Meaning, if I'm applying that on crops, I get a way higher yield. If I'm applying it to my grass, it doesn't burn up as easy, or my flowers, or whatever you're applying it to. It's universal. Everything grows in, well, not everything grows in soil, but everything grows in soil, and so it really just focuses on that part of the science.
So you're speaking my language here, because I love gardening and plants and farming and all that stuff. So that's really cool. We're going to have to talk offline about that a little bit. So,
yes.
So if you had to identify, I don't want to say just one thing, so I feel like there's probably a few things. What do you think is the most valuable thing that you've learned in the military so far that you can use in, whether it's at Greencastle or running your own business or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think, so my background being in special operations a little bit, they tend to focus on what's called preparation of the environment, right? Which is, again, a very strategic, you're kind of looking at the landscape, and you're always evaluating the risk versus return on any given day. And by that, I mean, you talk about, is it worth setting this up right now? Do I wait? Do I talk to this person? How much of a relationship do I need to have? Like, you're kind of looking at this patchwork of everything going on and figuring out like what's worth the day, what's worth later, what do you need later? And I think all of that really helps in the business world, because it is complicated, right? Like, things are moving so fast. We're all like panicked right now about AI, right? And how much that's going to change. And so, I think that's just a super valuable skill, is being able to really understand how you navigate all of that to get to your end goal, no matter what comes at you in any given environment. So.
Yeah, and I think some of that is like resiliency too, that like the military builds, that like you're going to do things that aren't going to be fun. You're going to have wet feet, or you're going to be sitting, you're going to be laying in the woods, your back's going to hurt. And like that does build that resiliency, so that when you do jump into a civilian career and like things aren't going your way, or you're owning a business, things aren't going your way, you're like, oh, hey, okay. Well, I've been through worse. So
there's always something worse.
Yeah. So what are some other skills, like maybe not necessarily for you, but if you had to look at just across the military, what are some other skills that you could call out to people who are listening that you think, hey, like these do apply to civilian careers, not just necessarily like Greencastle and consulting, but like just anything across the board?
And I think it's one that gets talked about a lot, leadership, right?
Yeah.
But it's so important. You cannot be a part of an organization and not be good with people, because people are all we have, right? And that's just a common denominator, whether you're working in government, whether you're working in a nonprofit, whether you're, whatever, like pick your company. At the end of the day, no matter where AI is going, there's always going to be people, right? And people are like your driving force. And I do think that the military, just inherently to everything, teaches people good people skills. And so, I'd say that's just everybody's got that.
So I have another question. We're talking a little bit about leadership here. So I'm curious of your take on being a female leader, because it is different. And I'm not one to like, I don't ever want to tokenize anybody or make it so it's like, oh, well, females are different, whatever. But it is a different experience, especially in the military. Like, is there any advice you have to any female leaders who are listening, or female military leaders who are maybe listening and thinking like, I need a little something extra here?
Yeah. Learn to read your audience. You will encounter, and this is kind of true regardless if you're female or whoever, but it does seem to apply a little more to females, or maybe people who don't quite fit the mold, right? And that has been a challenge for me in the past, where I'm a tiny statured female, and so the idea of screaming and yelling at somebody isn't really like a great method for me to get my point across. It also doesn't match my personality, but sometimes, you have people that they identify with that mold, like that is leadership, or you have to be this stern or like shut off, or, people have ideas of who their leaders should be. And so being able to kind of read that, staying true to yourself, but be able to read that and be like, okay, this is how I have to adjust and deliver my communication. And I think that's key to a leader, is being able to always be adaptable. People don't adapt to you, you adapt to them. And so it applies probably even exponentially if you're in that non-mold female or whomever kind of a status.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I truly believe in like being your authentic self when you're doing that, like not making it that like you have to be the screaming, stern person. You can still be a good leader and get your point across, and also still hold people accountable while not, needing to scream and yell, right? Like we know that that's still effective.
Well, and it's exhaustive showing up to work and not being able to just be you.
Right.
You spend way too much time pretending and not enough time doing the real work.
Right.
So.
No, exactly. So you mentioned before we got on this podcast that these skills compound over time. Can you talk a little bit about what that means when you say that, the transferable skills?
Yeah. So I kind of go to my personal experience where I've had my own business, and then I've transitioned into corporate roles as a data analyst, and it's like anything, experience just continues to build, right? And so you're able to take those foundational skills, but then you're like, oh, I applied it like this, and this is how it kind of turned out. And then now you're like, okay, well, you not only understand the outcome, but you understand how you transferred it. And so you can kind of, I use this as like, I went out, I did this, and I brought it back, and I remolded my tool, and now I'm going to go out and I'm going to face another challenge, and I know how to adjust those tools to fit more and more circumstances, and I can take my lessons learned and like really, really bring some of that deeper value to it. It's just really cool to watch how much you can apply that to across industries. Like I'm thinking of my current role now, and we've got a lot of utility companies, right? And that's just fascinating. And you're able to like lean in with that curiosity because you know that there's going to be a tool somewhere in your toolkit, and you're excited to use it. 'Cause you're like, ooh, yeah, what's the problems, right? Like, so yeah, just being able to use them everywhere.
Yeah, and that's not to toot our horn, but we will, because Greencastle is very, very good at this because we're all veterans. In case you're new here, every single person that works here is a veteran. So I think we have like 120 people at this point, which is crazy.
Yeah, growing.
And everybody's a veteran, which is really just maximizes the value of what veterans bring to the table when you have all of us together working on teams and everything. So I think that's really cool. But so what advice would you give somebody who is looking to get into the military?
Oh, I think it's probably good life advice in general. Be deliberate, but be flexible. and by that you wanna go into the military and have a good idea of what you want out of the military. And maybe you don't know exactly what that is, but explore your options. Be persistent as a bureaucracy. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Just be persistent if there's a goal you have in mind. But definitely take very deliberate steps because it'll go by so fast. But be flexible. The double-sided edge there is that it's a bureaucracy, so it's rigid. You can get things if you're persistent, but also you need to be able to, move around, wait, be patient. But there's so much opportunity out there in the military, and we're doing so many fun, different things, and we're at the edge of space now, and we're dealing with, probably some of the biggest challenges that the world has faced to date. And yeah, there's a lot out there, so I'd encourage people.
Yep, I think that's great advice. And I think like looking at, all the MOS and just understanding that even if you pick, signal versus infantry or whatever it is, you still get all those skills that we're talking about. Like across the board, everybody has that, like the resiliency, learning about leadership, being able to be agile and flexible and all that stuff. No matter what MOS you pick, those are the skills that are transferable in my opinion, are those like soft skills, right? So, okay, so on the opposite end of that spectrum, somebody's getting out of the military, they're transferring out, they're done. What advice do you have to give to that person?
Breathe. You're gonna get there. I think if you're in the process of transferring, there is a moment of reflection that needs to happen. Think about everything that you've done. What did you like? What did you not like? And find the industries that are going to cater most to those. Because as Lindsay was just saying, all of those skills that you have are going to play and be applicable almost anywhere you go. Remaining flexible and adaptable, knowing how to move those skills into whatever industry you are. But same advice, be deliberate, really know what you want to do, but be flexible. If it doesn't work out, find the next thing. But there's a lot of opportunity, and just take that time to reflect before you fully move on and immerse yourself elsewhere.
Yeah. And check out the Skill Bridge program.
That too.
That's a good one. So Greencastle has one, but that they're all over, and I think that's really cool. So like for here, we put everybody through all the certifications, and they get all the experience, and then some hands-on experience, and then push them out into a client, and they go, and they it's like a good way to transition. I feel like, I don't know how much you know about it, but I think it's such a cool program. So
yes, I think we've built one of the better skill bridges.
I would agree with that.
I
Maybe
only
a little
know of
biased,
like 3, but out of the 3 I know, it's the best.
So is there anything else you want to leave the audience with before we wrap it up?
No. Yeah, I think what we have going here at Greencastle is so awesome and so great. Like our enthusiasm for clients, and yeah, it's a really cool place to be, and I'm excited to be here and see what experiences come out of this.
Yeah, and it doesn't hurt that we have a bar in our office.
Oh yeah,
you know, we have some cool amenities here, so that makes it kind of cool too. But Whitney, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And everybody out there, please like and subscribe. Share anything you see on our social. We're Greencastle Consulting on Instagram and Facebook, and then Shots from the Winchester on YouTube. So please, you know, go there, like, follow. We appreciate every single thing. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you,
and we'll catch
Lindsay.
you on the next one.
Yeah.